Colorado, Greg Henna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing amazing, Neil. I'm so excited. I never told you this, but when I was a kid, one of my biggest heroes was Chuck Yeager. So I know he
Oh,
was never an astronaut, but he did fly a lot of jets and a lot of cool stuff.
all right. Well, fantastic. Our guest today is retired NASA astronaut and Air Force Colonel Terry Virts, who's launching a U.S. Senate campaign in Texas. How are you today, Colonel Terry?
Doing good. I'm in Houston today, but I'm in a different Texas town, it seems like every day.
Oh, I know Texas well, living in the Dallas Fort Worth area for around 2 years. But go ahead, Greg, with your first question.
Oh, excited to speak with you, Colonel. So, you've gone from flying F-16 combat, missions and commanding the International Space Station. What made you decide that your next mission would be a U.S. Senator, and why did you choose to run now?
Well, I joke that I lost a bet. But the reality is I just look at the country and it's going in a bad direction. I think most of us can agree on that. And I hate seeing what I'm seeing. And I'm running as a Democrat, and in Texas, Democrats haven't won here in over 30 years. Ann Richards was governor the last time a Democrat won, and Pearl Jam, Can't Find a Better Man, was at the top of the chart. So the Democratic Party here kind of is not winning statewide. And I thought that somebody with my background, connects really well with Texans. I want to focus on economic issues. Kind of the middle class is my vision for the future, to strengthen it and grow it. And I think that is a message that plays really well here. So it's not like I said, someday I want to be a senator. How am I going to get there? I said, man, things are bad. And I think I'm a guy that can bring something to the table and offer that we haven't seen for a long time in Texas.
So, Colonel, so you were a Republican at one point in time, then, correct?
Honestly, I was a registered independent for my whole life because I have this independent streak. But when I was in high school, I stuffed envelopes for Ronald Reagan. I had lived as a exchange student in Finland with a Finnish family, and I didn't know where Finland was. They told me you're going to Finland on an exchange, and I had to get the atlas out and look up Finland. I didn't know where it was. We were right on the border of the Soviet Union. This was back in the 80s. And I could see, literally, we were on a lake and the Soviet Union was on the other side, this town called Imatra. And so it really made an impression on me. And I came back and I was like, you know what, that we need to defend against Russia. We need to defend against this, authoritarian dictatorship. It's bad. And now, decades later, we seem to be flirting with the same thing that back in the 80s, we were pretty clear-eyed was the enemy. Now we seem to be flirting with that. So anyway, that's what motivated me to join the Air Force.
Wow, you've played in some of the highest pressure environments imaginable. I mean, space combat, right? So how will that leadership experience translate in dealing with gridlock and partisanship and compromise that you're going to come across in the Senate?
Yeah, so it's one of the experiences I had when I was a space station commander. It was when Russia first started the invasion of Ukraine, 10 years ago. And so I was in Moscow when they annexed Crimea, and I was in space. One night we were floating over. It was me and a Russian guy named Sasha Samokutyaev looking out the window. As we went over Eastern Europe, you could see red bombs going off in Donbass. We were actually watching Russians kill Ukrainians 10 years ago from the space station. But I was their commander. I had to work with Russians. And so you talk about bipartisanship. That was the ultimate, that was the ultimate working with your enemy. So I'm going to do this. And look, I don't view Republicans as the enemy. I don't view any American as the enemy. But I view my job as a senator is to represent all Texans. So I'm going to be there to represent all of Texas, left, right, and center, green, purple, black, brown, white. I want to be the senator for all Texans.
What do you think is the biggest challenge, especially being in a state that's mostly Republican, to turn people to your side?
I've heard it said it's not that Texas is that Republican. It's not like we're Wyoming or Idaho or Alabama or something like that. The Texas is mostly non-voting. I think there are actually more Democrats here. I've seen some data, but they don't vote. So it's really an issue of getting people out to vote. But even for folks that vote, I'll tell you a story. I was driving in the country about a month ago, 2 months ago, and there's this guy has a store with all kinds of Trump stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go talk to, I don't know who this is. I'm going to talk to him. You go in there and he's got the Hillary for prison thing, and he's got pictures of Trump everywhere. Talked to him for an hour and a half, and afterwards we were friends. And he's like, "Where's your website? I'm going to give you a donation." So I can talk to people. I'm a common sense guy. I'm a Texan. I want to focus on. I come from a working class family. I say my family has a lot more union cards than college degrees. I was the first guy to go to college. I walked a picket line last week here in Houston. It was the first ever hotel worker strike in the state of Texas. So that's who I am. I'm a working class kind of guy, and that plays well. I was just in Midland a few weeks ago. That plays well in the oil fields of the Permian Basin. Plays well in the refineries here in Houston. That's who I am.
Right. So, Democratic leadership, as you've mentioned, they're lost, out of touch with working class families. What's the first policy area that you would focus on to prove to your Texans, your brethren there, that you're serious about shaking this all up?
Yeah. So Texas, we have UT and we have A&M. So if you went to Austin, the home of UT, and did a poll, I think the Aggies would have higher polling numbers than Democrats here in the state of Texas. So you talk about tough, like going around the state of Texas going, I'm a Democrat, and you don't get a lot of excitement in most places. So middle class issues are what I care about. One of the things that I really care about is healthcare, because I have family who work in healthcare. I've had a lot of healthcare. Every person has healthcare issues that they have to go see a doctor and they pay too much for. So my focus on healthcare is going to be to bring costs down. And I look at any market as a supply and demand issue. Supply and demand is what determines prices. So I think we need to increase the supply of healthcare. We need more doctors. One of my children is in medical school right now. They haven't increased the number of residencies for doctors in decades, and that needs to change. I think that we should supply preventative health care for free. We can't just give Medicaid for all right now. That would instantly bankrupt a country that already has a $37 trillion debt. But we can do preventative medicine. Things like, of course, vaccines. First of all, we need to get back to where we actually believe in vaccines. But those should be free. I think mammograms should be free. I think cancer screening should be free. If you catch those problems early, you can spend $1,000 today to save $100,000 a few years down the road. So healthcare is that's one issue that I would focus on immediately.
Well, you're looking at the vouchers disappearing, like on certain healthcare for the Affordable Care Act. So
Yeah,
that's going to be big. Expires 2025. So that's going to be big, right, for a lot of working class families,
it's
especially.
going to crush. Yes, 1,000%. So if people don't know, a lot of people get a government subsidy to pay for their health insurance. I was talking to a young person recently. He's making $4,000 a month. He has a $700 a month insurance premium with a $14,000 deductible for him and his wife. So the subsidy loss is going to impact. I've seen numbers, millions of Texans are going to suffer from that. Not only the subsidy loss, but also Medicaid cutbacks. And so this administration is crushing working Texans with these policies that are great for, if you're a billionaire, it's great. If you're a working person, it's not so great.
Got it. So I'm a when guy, not an if guy. So when you're elected, how
I
will
like the
you
way you think.
champion? How will you champion education, STEM, and future-focused policies that can help Texas lead the nation in the decades to come?
Absolutely. So as you know, I'm running for the U.S. Senate, so there's not a lot of direct educational impact. Most school districts are run locally,
Okay.
but the Senate has a role. I think the Department of Education has an important role to help poor students, to help disabled students. Of course, this administration is destroying the Department of Education. I'm a product of public schools. I'm very passionate about public schools. I've probably spoken in hundreds of schools throughout my career. Um, I would not have gone to the Air Force Academy had my parents not bought a house they couldn't afford in a district in a district that had public schools. And so the way not to do it is what Greg Abbott and the Texas Republicans have done, is with vouchers that are going to take billions of dollars out of public education. So I think public schools need to be well funded. I think they need to be safe. Like, there's so many issues. I've talked to friends of mine who are teachers here in South Houston, and their schools are not safe. And so we need to figure out how kids can learn in a safe environment, in a device-free environment. I think that's very important. But the federal government can do some things to help, especially poor school districts, making sure the kids have food. One of the things I've talked to teachers who teach in low income schools, if the kids are hungry, how are they going to learn? Like you have to at least have breakfast before you can sit down in your math class. And so there's a lot of issues like this that I want to focus on that unfortunately this current administration is trying to destroy.
Okay. And is there a way locally that I know you'll be in the US,
Right.
locally they can start to pick up the slack if those things continue to change?
Well, I think education is one thing, but there's a lot of issues that federal dollars are not going to be as plentiful as they used to be. And ironically, most federal dollars go to red states. So the Republicans who voted for this administration are being hurt. They voted against their own interests. But I one of the things I believe about the federal government is that in general it should just stay out of local school districts. Like I want my local school district to be in charge and to run the education. I think the federal government's role is more being helpful. These school districts need money for special needs students. I was with a group of special needs students yesterday. That's important that those kids have some help. Like the more help, the more education, the training that they get now, the less we have to pay later in life for them. So I think we need to not be penny wise and pound foolish about things like that.
Mhm. So I can only imagine that training as an astronaut prepared you for thousands of scenarios, but you still had to adapt when the unexpected arose. How will you apply that same ability to adapt and solve problems when navigating the unpredictability of Washington politics?
This has been a learning experience to say the least. I will say I was just on an interview just before this, and it was supposed to be this friendly, happy interview, and all of a sudden I got ambushed. And I stayed calm, answered the questions, but it's important to stay calm, and that was something that I had to do as a fighter pilot and as an astronaut. But there's so many things about politics. I have a book to write after this whole experience is over with because, man, our political system sucks. The money in it is awful. There's a lot of things that you don't want to know, but it's been crazy. When I first started running, we put together a small team, but I had kind of like the Washington, D.C. Democratic insider A team. I had a handful of consultants. These were insider Democrats for sure. And we started talking about what I was going to say, and they told me don't talk about Trump. Don't mention Donald Trump. Talk about billionaires. Just have these nebulous billionaires, but don't ever mention Trump. And I was like, guys, I'm running because of Donald Trump. I'm not going to pretend like I like him. I think he's a bad president. I think I would be a better president. It was insane. And these guys are not my consultants anymore. But what I noticed, there's it's kind of right now, there's three main Democrats in the Senate race here in Texas. My other two opponents don't ever talk about Donald Trump. They talk about these nebulous billionaires, and clearly they're taking that advice that I thought was bad advice. So I think the country has voted that they don't like the traditional old school Washington Democrats for the last several years. We need to listen to the voters and do the things voters want and not do the things that the DC consultants want.
So in that messaging, running in Texas is the opportunity. So you really are to the center. I was talking to former Congressman Jason Altmaier about how he said basically he could never run in the center. He was a center running senator in Pennsylvania the whole way through. He was on both sides. He worked with both sides of the aisle. And he said that never someone from the center could ever be elected again. And that was what his point. I'm just bringing this up just because I've talked to Congressman Altmaier. What is your thoughts on that? Because that's the thing, because you're definitely into the center. I spoke to somebody a couple of weeks ago on Cutting Edge Benefits podcast with my Neil Haley show, and same thing came. She absolutely, and she's running in New Hampshire. She absolutely sees the same time. This is the kind of thing that finally there is a center. Why do you feel that people don't think that's going to happen? That it's impossible?
The problem is partisan primaries, and there's a lot of reforms I want to do in our democracy. I think we need term limits. I think we need to bring the president back under control the way the founding fathers intended. I think we need to get money out of politics. There's a lot of things I'd like to change. Partisan primaries may be the worst thing that we have. We need to stop gerrymandering, which of course the president of the United States just demanded, and his servant, Greg Abbott, provided that. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party here did not fight back. Well, we can get to that next. The partisan primary system requires you to win the primary, which are normally the most partisan voters, right? And the Democrats, it'll be the most liberal people, and the Republicans, it's the hardcore MAGA people, which is probably why Ken Paxton is going to win the Republican primary here in Texas. He's the impeached, indicted, super hardcore MAGA guy, and he's leading in the polls right now. So I think we need to end partisan primaries. But to your point about being a centrist, I don't know. I am who I am. I mean, it depends on the issue. Ask me different issues. Uh, Now, the reality is, I'm not going to win an election in Texas unless I get some reluctant Trump voters. Like, there's a lot of people in Texas that didn't like Trump. They held their nose, moderates or independents or Republicans. They held their nose because they just couldn't stomach Kamala Harris. So, unless I get some of those voters, I'm going to lose the election. Every Democrat will lose the election.
Interesting. And do you think the playbook? And then I'm going to go back to Greg with the next question.
Look, my playbook is travel the state, do in-person town halls. We got some next week. We're going down to the Valley on the Rio Grande border. We're going to Fort Worth tomorrow, actually, I think. Travel the state, meet voters in person, go on podcasts like this, go on Fox News. I've been on Fox News. I've been on Newsmax. Last time I was on Fox News, it was about space, but I criticized Elon Musk and the guy's head exploded. He literally had a meltdown, went on a monologue, and it's like, sorry, Terry, we're out of time, and cut me off. But I have to go on those platforms because that's where at least most of them are not going to vote for me. They're not going to write me a $20 check or whatever, but I need some of those votes. So I'm going to be on right, left, and center media.
Very smart. And podcasting, and especially places that are going to go in the community once you see those numbers. It's all about numbers and polling at the end of the day. Go ahead, Greg, with your, before we have our final question.
So Colonel, Texas is home to some of the fastest growing sectors like aerospace, energy, AI. From your experience with NASA and private industry, what's your vision for making Texas the leader in innovation while protecting the jobs and keeping America secure?
Yeah, absolutely. Texas is an amazing place to do business. So if you're thinking about where to locate your company, come on down to Texas, y'all. We got everything. One of the things I will not do is have $100,000 visas for immigrants. Immigrants are very important, obviously, to the tech community. They're very important here to Texas. And by the way, we're all immigrants. Like everybody in America is an immigrant of some kind. Somebody in their family came from somewhere. So I think using immigration as a competitive advantage is a way that America and Texas can win. I think having a smart amount of regulation where people are, businesses, we make sure the environment is protected, we make sure workers are protected, but we make sure that businesses can outcompete our foreign competitors. So I think that's an important thing. A lot of people are leaving Texas right now because of women's rights. I think we're going to have 15% less OBGYNs here in the state of Texas. There was just a big article that came out today about how Texas professors are leaving the state because of all this suppression and repression. So I would stop the repressive tactics that this Trump administration is doing and make Texas a place where people want to come because the cost of living is great. The warm sun, if you like warmth and sun, Texas is a place to be. The people are awesome. They're very friendly. But we need to get rid of this insanity that's happening now that's kicking people out of our state.
Got it.
All right, Greg, you have your final question that you ask every one of our celebrity guests. Go ahead with that question.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear your answer, Colonel. So tell me, Colonel, what do you feel is the most important thing in life you've ever learned?
Well, that is a profound question. The most important thing in life. So I'm a dad, I'm a family guy, I've got kids, I'm a Christian. Um, what One of the things that I try and live my life by, I did it professionally and I hope I do it personally, is to leave everything I do better off than when I got there. Don't just go in and make a mess and leave, but leave everything better. So your relationships with the people that you care about most, the work that you do, try and leave it a better place. But maybe the lesson learned is that time is batting 1,000 and the clock is ticking. So say the things you need to say to the people you love. do the things you need to do. For me, running for Senate, it's like, look, when I'm 67, I ain't gonna be doing this. I'm 57 now, so it's time for me to do it. Time is batting 1,000. So do what you need to do now because you never know.
That's excellent.
Love it. So best place people can check you out?
TerryVerts.com. There it is in the background, TerryVerts.com. On social media, I'm on all the different social medias as Astro Terry or Astro_Terry. It depends. So follow me there. Come to some town hall in-person events. We're going to start posting those. And I'll answer any question. I'll talk to anybody, right, left, or center. I'm happy to talk to folks. I believe if a Democrat's going to win, it's going to be me. Using the same old playbook is we can't do the same thing and hope for a different result, right? That's the definition of insanity. So if folks want to help me out, terryverts.com's website. There's a cool launch video. I filmed it in a World War II Jeep and in my space shuttle training cockpit. So if nothing else, go to the website and see my launch video.
And Colonel Terry, do you have other projects right now you're doing, or people could check out your books, different things like that?
I do have several books. I had a Nat Geo photography book. I've got a book called How to Astronaut. I have a kid's book that's called The Astronaut's Guide. I actually have some other books that I wanted to write. One called Some Dogs for like a baby first cardboard, one line per page kind of book. But all that stuff's on hold. I'll tell you what, running for Senate is a full-time job. Running for Senate in a state like Texas is a full-time job.
It was great to learn some of those behind the scenes, and we appreciate it.
It was great talking to you guys. This was awesome.
Yeah,
All right,
you as well.
That was the special simulcast.